Welcome, everyone, to the Development Review Commission hearing for October 25th, 2022. We've got a pretty lengthy agenda today, and so after we get through some of our preliminary business here, I'll kind of lay out the agenda so everyone knows what we're doing and what the order will be. The purpose of the Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment through the city for residents, businesses, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interests of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its decision. Development Review Commission recommendations to the City Council are not final decisions. Today we have with us from the Commission, Commissioners Michelle Schwartz, Don Casano, Vice Chair Andy Johnson. I'm Chairman Mike DiDomenico. To my left, Commissioners Barbara Lloyd, Linda Spears, and Joe Forte. With us from staff, I've lost my list. With us from staff today, we have Director Jeff Temulevich, Ryan Levesque, Steve Abrahamson, Saparna Dasgupta, Diana Kaminsky, Lee Jimenez, Karen Stovall, Obinia Kingsby II, Lily Drosos, Sydney Dietering, Joanna Berry, and Jason Wolf. Tonight, we have two sets of minutes that we'll be voting on, and for the record, Commissioner Joe Forte will be abstaining. He was not present for that meeting. We have several items that we are going to propose for our consent agenda, and I'll read a list of those off here in a second. We have two items that were originally advertised for tonight's meeting. That is item number 9 and item number 13. If you are here to be heard on either of those items, we will not be hearing those cases tonight. Item 9 has been withdrawn, and item 13, which was the Caliendo residence, a zoning map amendment, that has been rescheduled for our next meeting, November 8th. So if you're here for that, sorry for your travels, but we have other exciting cases that you can stick around for. Our intention with our consent agenda is to vote on the following cases in one single motion, and to vote in the affirmative to pass those cases. Those would be items number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 15, and 16. Is anyone here for the public to be heard on any of those matters?
Chairman, we do have a comment card for item number 15, Perry Andrea Salado.
All right. And what's the other one? Okay, 14 we're already hearing. So we will pull item number 15 from consent, Perry and Rio Salado, and we will also hear that case. All right, anything else? Anyone still waiting to fill out a comment card? Just hasn't gotten to it? All right. Then that will be our consent agenda. Commissioners, the minutes for the September 13th, 22 regular and study session, we discussed those in pre-session. Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Casano.
Yes, I would make a motion for approval of the Development Review Commission study session of September 13th, 2022, and the Development Review Commission minutes of the regular meeting of September
September.
13th, 2022.
Do we have a second? Second. It's been moved by Commissioner Casano, seconded by Commissioner Spears. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed? And one abstention. Motion carries 6-0. Entertain a motion for approval of our consent agenda. Vice Chair,
I move for the approval of the consent agenda.
do we have a second? Second. Moved by Vice Chair Johnson and seconded by Commissioner Spears. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, everybody. That brings us to item number 12. Item number 12 is a request for a use permit to allow residential in the CSS zoning district and a DPR for a new 2 to 3 story multifamily development. It's called Apache River Apartments. And at this time, I would ask for the applicant to come up and make presentation.
Good evening. My name is Mike March with Moderna Architects. We're the applicant for the Apache Apartments mixed-use project. Forgive me, I see the best way to. Okay. Apache Apartments located at 1292 South River Drive, Tempe, Arizona. We're here tonight seeking a request for a use permit to allow residential uses in a CSS zone. That's specifically for apartments above commercial along Apache. And then we're also here for review of the development plan review of the new 2 and 3 story multifamily development for a total of 12 apartments as well as commercial retail space along the ground level of Apache. The property, as you can see, is bordered to the east by River Drive, north to residential Lemon Street, and then, of course, to the south on Apache. There is 2 zoning within the property, R4 against Lemon, and the CSS zoning district, which is to the south against Apache and running along River. You can see our proposed design is for 3 sets of buildings, one against Apache and one along River. Those are both within the CSS zoning district. And then there is a very similar 2-story building on Lemon Street, strictly residential. I'm showing just kind of for orientation purposes, that's the zoning district split between the R4 and the CSS. The first building is a 3-story building consisting of ground floor retail with 4 apartments on the upper 2 floors. So 2 floors of apartments above each of the 2 commercial boxes on the bottom. An elevation of what that would look like along Apache. You can see the masonry element along the ground floor with the retail in it, and then the 2 apartment buildings on top of it. Pictures from kind of the corner of Apache and River, utilizing different materials and overhangs and what have you. We tried to blend it in with the buildings to the back. So following then the rear buildings, 2 stories, both of them have a total of 4 apartments in each of the 2 buildings along River and along Lemon Street. Again, similar architecture, scaled down a bit, more kind of private in their zoning. All the parking is within the site, screened by either the landscape or the buildings themselves. On the parking lot side of the building, you can see the entrances to the apartments and what have you. A similar look along Lemon Street, but with heavier landscaping and more setbacks and what have you. Again, this is kind of a corner of a side elevation of Lemon Street and River. The apartments themselves, right now our lot coverage is 31%. versus the 75% allowed under the district for the CSS zone, with a density of 18 density units per acre versus the 25 allowed. On the R4 zone, again, we're trying to keep it modest. We're down at 21% actual versus 60 allowed, and a density of 17 units per acre versus 25. The total number of apartments, again, 12 with the 2 retail spaces. So that concludes our presentation. Any questions or?
Questions, Commission? Speak to me a little bit. This is my issue with the project is not the design, the look, the colors, the materials. My critique or my concern with the project is that it's a blended site. The general plan calls for about 2/3 of the site originally to be CSS. It anticipates commercial zoning, commercial use, and about 1/3 of the land, and I'm kind of rounding here, but it's not far off, 1/3 of that for multifamily. And we've taken a blended site, and we've now made it a multifamily site and threw in 1,744 square feet of retail. So far off in ratio from, I think, what the original intent for these parcels were in the general plan. So speak to me a little bit. Are there challenges on this site to doing more commercial? What makes you want to?
There are some challenges with the parking. And again, we're trying to keep the project relatively lower in scale. We do have Lemon Street behind us, which is strictly residential. As with most projects, it comes down to parking. And we do realize that we're in the transportation district, which helps it significantly, but we're not quite close enough to take advantage of all the credits for being at a station area. And so by the time we kind of do the math and the additional parking required for the commercial versus what would be required for residential, we found we really couldn't get that much more commercial on the site.
Okay. What's the intent? What kind of commercial do you anticipate being in that 1,744 square feet?
Well, definitely retail. There's provisions to allow for I wouldn't say fast food, but for eating and things like that. We're providing within the design opportunities, to run grease ducts and things of that nature. So you could put restaurant style in there that would not only satisfy the public, but also the neighbors, and there's also there's cul-de-sac going in across the street as well, and there's other retail opportunities there as well. But it's certainly not meant for, let's say, professional office or anything like that. The development intent was to keep it retail open to the public.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, other questions? Yes, Commissioner Lloyd.
Thank you. Mine's also related to the retail as well, just in terms of the viability of leasing retail at this location. It's concerning in terms of what the demand might be there. What type of finishes is the developer willing to bring the retail to increase the likelihood that they may be able to get a viable tenant in there without leaving the space, see-through for the next 3 years, decade, et cetera? And I guess that was my one question about that in terms of what type of, the finishes to get it leasable. And then if it's not leasable, what types of plan B, if any, do they have for that space? I just have major concerns about that actually becoming leased retail.
To speak first of all to the plan B, I think keeping it a relatively flexible, open space that can accommodate both retail and restaurant uses. I could see a sandwich shop in there, or things of that nature. There's a lot of different types of places that we see a lot of retail that lends itself well to being a restaurant, but really not much else. And in this case, I think we're allowing a space that can be very adaptable for different types of uses, whether it's a dry cleaner or a sandwich shop or some kind of service or something like that, maybe as a, a FedEx drop-off or some of that nature. I think I can't speak for the developer more than to say that I know he's committed. You can see the quality of the materials in the buildings and things of that nature. He wants to bring a quality product to Tempe, and more than likely, right now the spaces are planned to be shell, but we could fit them out accordingly. He wants high-quality tenants in there.
Yeah, that's where I see the problem is a lot of times these developments get to a gray shell and then they never get finished beyond that because they're not the driver of the project, right? So they just sit vacant and there's no further investment. So
Right.
I would like to at least see the shells brought to some sort of vanilla shell versus a gray shell, so they're more likely to be
Definitely.
leasable.
Well, I think that's part of the component of having the residential aspect of it. First of all, you got a built-in clientele that's right above you in the same parking lot that can utilize those services. And secondly, we're not creating too much commercial in that area that, you might have spaces that remain vacant.
Commissioner Spears.
And that brings up a good point in terms of when you say the tenants will be their customers for your retail, and it's not enough units to do that. I'm not really impressed with the underutilization of the project. It seems like could handle a much denser property, number of units, et cetera. And I've gone on record of not supporting losing commercial space to retail. So I think those are hard issues. And if it's simply a matter of parking, I mean, other developers have been able to go in and do something. You are on the transit line. It's a quarter of a mile from the from River to the station. So I think that's not a good argument for not having a denser project.
You were mentioning, you say that you'd like to see more parking or
More a denser product. So instead of having it be more like garden apartments, that's what it looks like to me with that few of units, in that area. The retail should be more present on Apache and not just an afterthought. And because if you drive down Apache Boulevard, you'll see all the mixed-use projects that are sitting vacant. Because as Commissioner Lloyd stated, they're brought to gray shell and no one wants to go in. I mean, if you're truly going to try and get restaurant tenants in there, you need to go ahead and provide the grease traps and the things that would make it reasonable for someone to come in. That's pretty small space for a restaurant to go in, even a fast food type thing. So I think, hopefully your client is being realistic about what's going to happen with that. I was involved with a small ice cream store, and it's hard to do the kind of volume you need to do within a small amount of space when even if you've got 100 customers coming a day, it's not enough to be viable. So it's just something to be concerned about.
Understood, and I think we would like to see more density there. The challenges we ran into were with the zoning district regulations, and perhaps Mr. Kingsley could speak to that as to some of the challenges that we had getting increased density on that site. A lot of it, part of it has to do with parking, and other things have to do with just what's allowed on that property. I don't know.
Other questions? All right, we're going to take a seat. We're going to have the staff come up and add to the mix, and then you'll have another opportunity to come up and be heard again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kingsby.
Good evening, Commission. Would you like me to go through a presentation or go straight to questions, or?
For
Just
me,
wanna know how you
it'd
want to
be
handle it.
fine to just kind of hit some of the points of concern and maybe talk a little bit about the parking challenge.
Okay, so it sounds like from the discussion you all had, there are some limitations to the site in regards to the zoning. As you mentioned, it is a split zoning, and they decided to move forward with that split zoning. So as far as the number of units that they have on the site, was in meeting those zoning requirements for those two zoning districts, which is R4 and CSS. As far as the amount of commercial goes, I can't necessarily speak to that as much. I guess it depends on the type of use you have going in there as to whether or not there be sufficient parking. And there are certain other avenues that could be met as far as providing a traffic study or parking study analysis, things such as that. But we didn't get to that point with this project. It was more so, they had something in mind and they want to stick with the current zoning, the existing zoning site, not go through a rezone process at the time. And with that in mind, which is why it's presented the way it is today.
Okay, questions? Commission?
Good, Mr. Kingsley. Where would the retail park or where would the commercial park?
The commercial can park in the parking lot that is on the site. Let's see if
Right, would they park right behind those two buildings or wherever it was open?
So there aren't designated spaces per se. If they wish to do that, that's something that the developer can do. But they can park anywhere in that parking lot in the rear of the site. So it'd be to the north of those building 2. Mm-hmm. They can park anywhere in there.
Well, if I were a tenant in the building and I couldn't keep parking in the same space and I had people coming in to use whatever this commercial retail usage would be, and they can park anywhere, I would be a little concerned that I didn't have a designated space for me that was adjacent to my location. So
yes, and to reiterate, if that's something that the applicant is amenable to, I think that's something, if they want to designate certain spaces for the retail and then also ones for residential, I think that's something we can do or work with them on.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Thank you, Chair. Is retail required on this site because of the CSS zoning?
With the CSS zoning, and if the residential component or use permit were approved, it is not technically required, but they are proposing it as part of their project. They want to include commercial of some sort with this.
Thanks.
Which would include office.
Yes.
Comments or questions? Thank you very much. At this point, I'd ask the applicant if you've got any other things you'd like to respond to. Any other thoughts you want to share, or anything that staff said that you want to respond to?
Well, I think we'd definitely be open to increasing the density on the site. It's just that, as I spoke earlier, I think that the challenges with just the zoning district, and in addition to just basic density requirements and things of that nature, just the basic design requirements that are limit the opportunity in this particular site to what we've got going on.
Okay, I appreciate that. All right, I'm going to call to the public to see if we have anyone who wishes to be heard on that, and then we're going to come back to you in a second.
Okay.
Members of the public, anyone here also wish to be heard? I don't have any comment cards specifically, so I'm not necessarily expecting anyone came to be heard on this. But all right, then I'm going to close the public comment portion of this hearing for this case. Seems to me, as the applicant, there's two things that can happen here tonight. We've got an application in front of us. It's clear. Our questions have been answered. We can vote on it as presented. Or I would, with the support of the commission, be amenable to a continuance that would give you a chance to consult with your client to see if they'd like to change any aspect of the design or their application before us. Kind of go either way based on what your preference is.
I think we'd be amenable to a continuance.
Okay.
If I could ask if the board would be open to presenting some alternatives to.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. No problem. Yeah, it's not just the two of us here. Other people want to hear what you got to say.
Sorry. I guess, would the board be open when we come back with, let's say, a revised design, open to maybe suggestions on changes to the zoning restrictions for that particular site?
What you would do during the continuance, and we wouldn't necessarily have to set it to a date certain, we could just leave it open-ended. That saves your applicant from having to kind of reapply and repay fees that maybe have already been paid. But you would need to consult with staff as to the nature of, if it's minor tweaks and changes that you're looking for, probably moves pretty quickly and staff can guide you through that. If you want to go through a broader plan change for the property, which may or may not include a rezoning, instead of just working with the CSS and the RU zoning that currently exists on the two parcels, if you wanted to come back for a mixed-use designation that would allow you a much denser project, that would be something they could also guide you through.
Okay.
Yeah. And you may decide, nope, we're going to just stick with what we've got. This is what we want. Then you could reapply or get a new date set for a hearing.
Chairman, and commission members, it would be a little bit helpful for staff also to understand if there is this, because we have an application with an existing current condition, current zoning, and the rezoning process is very different with a PAD or however for higher density, and there is limitations. So to get some idea about exactly what the commission is looking for so that staff can guide the applicant through that process also.
Yeah, we can share some comments, and I do not, my intention is not to tell the applicant or their representative what they should do, just giving them an opportunity to maybe go back and say, you know, maybe we want to take a different run at this project, but they very well may say, no, what we've got now, we just want a new date and a hearing and a vote. So, but because the actual applicant isn't here tonight, I don't know if the property owner, you know, if we should really put you on the spot to make that call tonight.
Right.
Without giving you that.
I would say we should go for continuance.
Yeah. And then we'll work with staff. What you've heard tonight from some of the commission that's spoken is some concerns about the commercial aspects of the property, its viability, and the amount of it. And you've heard from a few people, a couple commissioners who've mentioned, hey, this site begs for a little more density, being in the TOD, being on Apache with the public transportation amenities that are there. Maybe there's an opportunity here to make the site more efficient and make parking work given where the site is at. So I think that's what you've heard, but again, that's 3 or 4 commissioners who've spoken on it. So. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I would entertain a motion on this case.
Chairman, I move that we continue this case to a date not specified.
It's been moved by Commissioner Spears, seconded by Commissioner Cassano. Any discussion? Then I'll call a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And the motion for continuance carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Kingsby, for helping us with that. All right, that brings us to our next case. This is item number 14 on the agenda, and this is listed as the Modera Rio Salado. I have right now one comment card for someone wishing to be heard here. So if your name is not Jay DeWitt and you wish to be heard, fill out a card and bring it on up. At this point, I would ask the applicant to come up and present. Hello, applicant.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Wendy Riddell with the law firm Barry Riddell. Like any good lawyer, I could talk as much as you might want to hear me speak tonight, but if I read the tea leaves right at the study session, I think the issue is limited to what may be presented by the opposition. So I leave it to you. If you'd like me to still give a brief presentation, I'm certainly happy to do that. Or if you'd prefer to hear from Mr. DeWitt and then allow me to rebut that, I'm happy to do that as well.
My preference would be a very brief introduction of the case for people who aren't necessarily familiar with where it is and what it is.
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's my pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of Mill Creek for the Project Madera. Our team consists of Hardy Rio Development, which is a collaboration between the Howard family and Mill Creek. We also have quite a talented design team otherwise that's a part of it. Our request here today is for a general plan density map amendment of medium to high density, as well as to high density, a general plan land use map amendment from public open space to mixed use. That public open space, by the way, is just Rio Salado Drive, so it's not actually viable. It's sort of a remnant piece that was left over. General plan density map, as well as a zoning map amendment from GID Rio Salado to multi-use Rio Salado. Oh, thank you. I've never been accused of being too quiet. A planned area development overlay, and then development plan review. So there is a history here with this site. This was actually the subject of a development agreement about a little over a year ago. It was entered in between the City of Tempe and Hardy Rio. The development agreement contemplated the very land uses that we're showing you here today. Importantly, the purchase price from this property, because the majority of this site is City of Tempe land, will actually go to the Tempe Coalition for Affordable and Workforce Housing. And I thought, looking back at this site, I think most folks here know this, but this is property that was actually been used as the traffic operations center for nearly 50 years. And I can tell you, Rio Salado in this area looks a whole lot different now than it did then. And at the time, that made a lot of sense for this to be city property and to be used that way. But as we have evolved, you can see everything that's coming from the lake, from the TCA to what's happening at the IDEA campus. You see the Carvana headquarters. Obviously, you see quite a bit of dense multifamily as you go to the east as well. This area has really become a gateway for the city of Tempe, and this project is in keeping with the spirit of that gateway. So when you look at this, you'll see the overall site is 5 acres. Like I mentioned, it's currently zoned GID Rio Salado Overlay District. Although importantly, because it is city-owned property, it's really not on the tax rolls, hasn't been for quite a long time. This, in fact, will actually get to put it on the tax rolls by rezoning it to the mixed use 4, PAD. We are looking at 319 residential units, 24 studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. We are looking at approximately 3,500 square feet of commercial space along Hardy Drive. We're looking, frankly, at a potential restaurant site. We've had some interest there. This site will also help complete the future transit easement for streetcar. Right along, there's a 14-foot easement for streetcar. So just very quickly, just wanted to show again that that open space was actually Rio Salado Drive as part of the general plan land use map. You can also say we're really completing the general plan density map. And then to give you an idea of the actual development plan, there is a water line easement that runs through the front where you see that surface parking, which is why you see it designed as surface parking. We are looking at 5 to 7 stories in height, 60 to 85 feet in height for the majority of it, the maximum height for an elevator shaft at 98 feet, setbacks, lot coverage. Again, just a quick look at the landscape plan. You can see the parking, you can see the shade, quite a bit of shade that we're providing here, a significant amount of landscaping that we're also providing. And then let me just share with you the elevations to give you an idea of what it will look like off of Rio Salado Parkway. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have and then reserve the remainder of my time for rebuttal.
Commissioners, questions? None at this time. I've got one point so that I don't forget to tell you, because we're the recommending body on this, so this will have more time in the public light. Just attachment 53, the very first bullet point, I think the response wasn't responsive to the question in the virtual meeting, so just something to clean up.
I will take a look off the top of my head. I don't know what that is, Mr. Chair, but I will make a note.
Someone asked what tree types and who the landscape architect is. and the response was other sites are under contract but have yet to be developed.
Thank you. We'll
So I
follow
think it was
Missed.
cut and pasted from
Yes.
some other response.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. I do have just a couple comments, questions. Can you just give the real Cliff Notes version for anyone that's glancing at this, that sees coming before this commission tonight that we are eliminating public space? So can you give a little bit of background to exactly what that means? Because that's not necessarily.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, thank you, Chairman, Commissioner Lloyd. It did look odd on the posting because it looks like we've got this great open space that we're somehow eliminating. I don't have a great answer as to why it ended up green on the map, but it is actually today Rio Salado roadway. So the area that's shown green is not open space that's being lost. It's actually Rio Salado Parkway itself. And it was just a remnant that was left there from long ago.
And so does that become part of the actual site with a right-of-way, or is that actually still going to be owned? Like, what's the property line there?
Also a great question. Actually, Commissioner Lloyd, it will be dedicated as a 14-foot transit easement to the city of Tempe.
Okay, and then last question, you are showing about a 3,500 square foot restaurant on the corner there. Can you talk about how that might be activated a little bit into that corner so that anybody, that it's more part of the overall Rio Salado Parkway and not necessarily embedded into this development?
So certainly, that was also, let me see if I can pull our graphic here. So certainly the reason it is established there at the corner is so it's got some street presence, and you can access it both from Rio Salado and from Hardy as well. It is intended to have that street presence. We think having a restaurant here would be spectacular for our residents as well. And so that's why we ultimately settled on the size, talking to the market. And it will be a space that we're required to shell out and have ready, and we've had some promising conversations, so we think it will be activated.
Yeah, my suggestion in the ultimate operation of that restaurant in that location is that in order to make it neighborhood friendly instead of just resident friendly is to address bike parking and ride share, pickup, drop off, and make it real friendly for people who are coming onto the site without bringing a car, which happens often in that area. Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Stovall, do you want to add anything to the mix?
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Karen Stovall, Senior Planner. I will be brief. So as the applicant explained, the site is located at the southeast corner of Hardy and Rio Salado. They're requesting a general plan projected land use map amendment, density amendments, zoning map amendment, PAD, and development plan review. I will discuss the neighborhood meeting and public input. So there was a neighborhood meeting required for the project that was held in May of this year. It was attended by 8 individuals, and the discussion did include landscape design, if affordable housing would be included in the project, if they knew the identity of the commercial tenant, if traffic control at First and Hardy was considered, the development of the IDEA campus on the north side of Rio Salado, and streetcar. As far as public input received, we did receive an email from the Phoenix Water Services Department regarding the 25-foot wide water easement that is running across the north end of the site. The city of Phoenix requested that there be a stipulation requiring the applicant receive approval for any work that would impact the easement, and it was determined by staff that the applicant is already legally obligated to have Phoenix's approval for any work that might impact the easement. So a stipulation that was proposed would not be necessary. And we also received a letter from the Phoenix Aviation Department stating that they believe the development would violate an IGA between Phoenix and Tempe. We have determined that the project would not violate the agreement. However, we are recommending several conditions to address the development's proximity to Sky Harbor Airport. and I will go over those. So as far as the unique conditions of approval go, the developer would be required to grant and record a navigation easement to the city of Phoenix. They would be required to confirm whether or not a Form 7461 would need to be filed with the FAA, and if so, that would need to be determined as a no hazard determination and submitted to Tempe before we would issue building permits. The next one is that the developer would need to record a notice to purchasers of the property of the existence of Sky Harbor, and that the developer would need to ensure that there's representation in the residential lease agreement or somehow in another way disclosed to prospective tenants of the proximity to the airport. As far as other unique conditions for the project, the Solid Waste Division had concern with the applicant's proposal to have staged trash containers, and they have requested that we require a compactor instead of trash staged containers. And there are two stipulations regarding modifications to the landscape plan, if necessary, to meet any landscaping requirements within that easement, and that they also submit a landscape plan for the deck, which we have not seen yet. The applicant is in agreement with all of these conditions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Thank you very much. Okay, I have one comment card in my hands, and Mr. DeWitt has requested that I read these comments that he has written into the record. As an airport sponsor, Sky Harbor Airport is obligated to try to ensure development around the airport is compatible with airport noise. The IGA between Tempe and Phoenix prohibits residential in the 65 DNL. Therefore, we object to the requested action. So that is in the record. Anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Hearing none, I will close the public comments portion. Does the applicant have any additional points they'd wish to make or any response to anything you've heard?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think it's just worth noting we obviously disagree. I think the mayor has come out and been clear about Tempe's position. We agree with Tempe's position on the IGA that multifamily is permitted. That's why we're in front of you today. I really don't have anything more to offer about that right now.
Is the applicant in agreement with all of the conditions of approval that are listed in the published report?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions, Commission? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I would recommend some commission discussion, or I would entertain motions, or a motion. Commissioners? Commissioner Lloyd? No.
I'll make a motion, I just don't know what the case number was here.
I'll pass this over to you.
I make a motion to approve case number PL 220082.
And that includes the stipulations, conditions of approval as read in the report. Do we have a second?
I would second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Lloyd and seconded by Vice Chair Johnson. Commissioners, any discussion? Any comments? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you all. This brings us to our last case of the evening. This is item number 15, Perry and Rio Salado. I would ask the applicant to come up, and I believe you can be fairly brief. You'll have a chance to come back and respond. We do have one member of the public who has asked to be heard. And so after hearing those comments, you may wish to come up and speak again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, for your record, my name is Manjula Voss, law from Gamage and Burnham. I'm here today on behalf of 4 Property. With me is Britt Perkins.
I'm Britt Perkins. I'm the architect of the project.
And so we will be brief, just give you a brief rundown of the project and have Britt briefly describe the design. We're happy to answer any questions. As I talked about, we are representing 4 Property. 4 has developed several high-density projects along light rail. Here's one in Sky at McClintock Station, then one in downtown Phoenix. We talked about it second, then Fillmore, which also has the Paseo, which is from the prior case where we moved the Paseo on that side, and then Centro, which is by Park Central, if any of you are in the area near Park Central. So developing along light rail or future in the TOD corridor. This is the site we had shown before. Right now we're talking about the site in red, which is Rio and Perry at 3.3 gross acres. So currently this is pictures, existing conditions. Our request today is to do a zoning map amendment to go from industrial to MU4, the PAD, and then a DPR for proposed development design standards. As you know, this is in the Smith Innovation Hub. We've really spent a lot of time with the staff. I believe you have a letter from Economic Development talking a little bit about kind of our work with the staff and kind of compliance with the Smith Innovation Hub design guidelines. But just some examples, this project is aligned with the project in terms of both support carb-reduced living, we have shade network, kind of streetscape enhancements, green building, green innovation, and kind of integrated spaces for artists we're working through. This is our projected land use and our projected residential density. And as we mentioned, it's a 6-story building, 308 multifamily units. We do have 464 parking spaces within 3 levels. I know there's some comments about parking. I don't think we need to get into it. I can if we need to, but I think this is a healthy park project. We have 306 bicycle parking spaces. And then just to go into it, we do have an on-site parking ratio of 1.46. For that, I'm going to let Britt talk a little bit about the design, very briefly, and then we're happy to answer any questions.
So our design is a little bit of an industrial rustic in keeping with the Smith Innovation Hub. And we have kind of a rough brick veneer around the base of the project with retail and public uses and live-work units along Rio Salado. We have the building stepped back along the whole center of the project facing Rio Salado to give relief to the height of the building with a resident plaza overlooking Rio Salado. We have other kind of rustic materials being used on the building, some metal siding, dark metal accents, and dark trim to kind of keep the industrial sort of look that it has. And let's see.
Just press this like a.
So this is along Rio Salado. Again, you can see the big resident plaza providing relief for the building massing.
I'll do it. There you go.
And the character of the building is 4-sided, so the character of the building carries all the way around all 4 sides. The landscaping kind of obscures some of the pedestrian-friendly features, but there's extensive landscaping.
And you can see this industrial. So that's kind of a brief presentation. Happy to answer any questions or.
Commission, questions? I think you covered it. Thank you very much.
Hi, Diana Kaminsky, Senior Planner. The project before you is for Perry and Rio. They're asking for a zoning map amendment from general industrial to mixed use 4, which is in compliance with the direction we're headed with the Smith Innovation Hub. Planned area development and development plan review for 308 units, including 4 live-work units. And Manjula went over the site location. It does have street frontage on Perry Industrial Drive as well as Rio Salado Parkway. This is the standards for the planned area development. They're actually more than doubling the amount of landscape area at the ground level than we would get with a general industrial development. So they're providing us with street frontage with separated sidewalks and enhanced landscape. All the parking is internal to the site with access for the commercial uses on the ground floor parking and then subterranean parking for some of the residential uses. I did want to point out, because we did receive an email from someone that was concerned. He is a property owner to the south of this site off of 3rd Street, and the concern was related to the parking calculations. They are meeting, everything that you see in yellow here is the parking standards per code. They are asking for a slight reduction for the 2-bedroom units, as well as, the yellow is representative of the reduction with the ratios proposed. So the 1-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units, and guest parking would be reduced. The rest of them are meeting the code requirements, and you can see there the parking required versus what's being proposed by the PAD. They also provided a study that showed the calculations using 2 other standards for parking in this type of a development. This is the landscape plan. There is a condition regarding the upper amenity deck for enhanced landscape as a buffer adjacent to the street for their community amenity deck. These are the elevations. Lots of elevations, including the internal courtyards. Materials. There was a neighborhood meeting. It was a virtual meeting. We had 2 members of the public attend and 3 members from staff. One attendee supported the project verbally, and the other one did express concerns about parking conditions. And this was a different person that attended the virtual meeting than provided the email that we received earlier. Staff did receive the 1 call, and then they followed up with the email. So that was the email that you received earlier. And there are no unique conditions for this case, and the applicant has reviewed the conditions and is in agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have 1 public comment card from Mr. Philip Yates. Anyone else wish to be heard, fill one of these out and bring it forward. Mr. Yates.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Philip Yates, and I'm the president for the Riverside Neighborhood Association. And the only concern that I have had is that we have really made Rio Salado a lot more dense. And I think that we should probably refrain, because we had the Coyotes proposal that's on the table right now that we're in discussion about. And Rio Salado has already become quite dense, and some concerns regarding parking and driving through the area of this general vicinity is in concern for the neighbors that live in that general vicinity. And with that, I'm done. So if anybody has any questions for me.
Questions from the commission? Mr. Yates, thank you very much for participating. Anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Okay, hearing none, I will close the public comments portion. Diana, come on up.
Sorry. Chair and Commission, I also wanted to point out we do have someone here from Economic Development. Jill did provide you a letter earlier today if you wanted to hear from her as well.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for Economic Development? No, I did see that letter. Thank you for reminding us, though, and pointing that out. I would ask, Montula, do you have anything you wish to add or respond to? Specifically with regard to parking and traffic in the area?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think, kind of from this site, it's about We have 308 apartments, we have over 446 parking spaces, so I think it's a pretty healthy parking number, frankly, for what will soon be kind of what I would consider, especially across from Tempe Marketplace, soon a streetcar route. We have a streetcar. It's going to be within the TOD in the future. And so trying to think through what you would do in terms of that. So I think we have more than adequate parking for kind of the site. And then hopefully we think that the people, we have a similar, as I showed you, similar sites in Midtown. In downtown, we have a lower parking ratio and try to encourage people to use biking. And obviously Orbit goes right up Smith, and there's a lot of other options instead of taking a car to get around.
I would agree with your point, especially as it relates to parking. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I would entertain a motion. Oh, I thought Michelle was going for it. She was leaning. Oh. All right. Go for it.
Okay, I move for the approval of PL 220181 Perry and Rio Salado
With the conditions of approval as
written.
As written.
Yep.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
You did the heavy lifting. It's been moved by Vice Chair and seconded by Commissioner Schwartz. I'll make one comment before I call for the vote. Mr. Yates made a good point. I mean, it's less about parking along Rio Salado right now. We do have a very large retail development across the street. State Farm and all of the projects that will be built on the north side of Rio Salado as you go down the lake does create a parking stress on Rio Salado, both east and west. The addition potentially of an entertainment district and sporting venue, even though there's fantastic access to the freeway system closer to where that might go, you still have people eastbound that are heading to Mesa, heading to Scottsdale or to the 101. We've all seen what happens when there's a Cubs game during spring training and what happens to Rio Salado at that end. I own a business 75 yards, 100 yards from where this project will go in. So parking is less of a concern, but just the traffic along McClintock at that intersection directly to the west. I'm hoping that the mass transit comes into the area sooner rather than later, and that we've got light rail and we've got Orbit and everything else. So,
Can I just add?
Yes, Commissioner Lloyd.
I would just like to add too, as someone who likes to bike, and we talk about bikes, having Rio Salado be a bit more bike friendly as it evolves with these new developments coming in. I just wanted that to be in the record too, to make it potentially wider for bike lanes and more protection.
There you go. Other comments? Okay. I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all, members of the public. Any commission member announcements? Anybody have anything you want to plug? Joe, what are you cleaning up this weekend?
No plug this week.
Nothing?
I'm going to South Africa tomorrow.
Oh, cool. I saw your community service group and pictures posted of what you did down by on the lake shore, and really, really impressive. Every weekend you're doing something fantastic. Thank you very much. Staff, what you got?
Chairman and commission members, a few different announcements. First, even for the member of public, anybody who's listening, and also the commission members, if you're available tomorrow evening for the Legoland visioning process for our general plan 2050, Tempe tomorrow. That's happening tomorrow evening. As for the Development Review Commission meeting, the next meeting is on November 8th. There are only 2 items on the agenda other than the annual report for the commission. The first item being a request for use permit to allow a 5-foot wall within the front yard setback for Saline residents at 1824 East Caroline Lane. And the request for the zoning map amendment and the preliminary subdivision plat for Caliendo residents at 1100 East Knox Road. Those are the only 2 items on the agenda for next meeting.
All right, thank you very much, everyone, for your participation. Meeting adjourned.